Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Patty McCord is passionate about reinventing the way we work. As the Chief Talent Officer at Netflix, she helped create the company's famous Culture Deck, a 124-page document that went viral and has been shared over 20 million times. Sheryl Sandberg called it, quote, the most important document to ever come out of the Valley. In her new book, Powerful, Building a Culture of Freedom and Responsibility, Patty teaches how to build high-performance cultures. Great teams are not created with incentives, procedures, and perks, she says. The best thing leaders can do is get rid of the cumbersome systems for managing people. With that freedom, though, comes responsibility. And when you treat people like adults and expect a lot from them in return, you'll be amazed at the great work they do. On today's episode, we talk about the biggest mistake HR leaders make, the truth about what motivates employees, and how to practice radical honesty in the workplace. This was an eye-opening conversation with Patty, so let's get right to it. Here's my conversation with Patty McCord. Patty, it is such a pleasure to have you on. Tell me this, what's the big idea behind this book?
Well, there's a couple of them, but probably the biggest one is that we can lose the management speak and the lies that we've been talking about work for decades and just start talking about the truth. And I think that we'll all be a lot happier and more in charge of our own careers.
Amen. Well, it is it's an incredible book. I loved reading it. And at Netflix, you built the culture by sort of stripping things away, right? Instead of adding rules and processes, you really got rid of those things.
Yeah, it took a long time, and it was like, it wasn't this grand strategy. It was very much like the product that is Netflix. It was just a series of what seemed at the time to be crazy experiments that didn't bring us down like everybody said it would.
And when did you start to see this as a sort of an issue or a gap that you wanted to sort of tweak from the traditional HR to the way in which you've done such an incredible job of tweaking it? When did you start to see that, and what gave you the courage to sort of unwrap it a little bit and rebuild it?
Well, there was a sort of a defining moment years ago. We had a layoff in the company. Most people don't realize this, at the beginning of the DVD by mail business. It was a very capital intensive business, and we were on borrowed time, borrowed money, and we were going to do an IPO, and it fell through in the year 2001. And so in the fall of 2001, we laid off a third of the company, and we just focused on creating a DVD by mail service and hoping that we could do that before we ran out of money. And it was very close. So we were doing twice as much work with a third as many people, and it was more fun. And so it was. I mean, Rita and I driving to work one day, I'm like, I've never worked this hard in my life or been as excited about getting here. And he said, me too. Let's try and figure out what that is. And that was the beginning. We had written down some stuff about the behaviors we liked in people, or that we wanted in people to work with, like, honesty and courage and all those nice things. But this was really, what is it? It was that people were super focused. The objectives, when you're in survival mode, you kind of know what you have to do and what you don't waste time doing. And we just had that's when we wrote the chapter in the Netflix Culture Deck called High Performance. And what it meant was not that we had only the A players. We had the people that were really focused on what it is we needed to do at that moment, that were really excited about doing it. And we realized that when we had that right magic combo, the rules were just going to get in the way. I just knew it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do. Really, we didn't know what to do, but we knew that going to a quote grown-up company was going to kill it. And so it was just moment by moment, maybe we don't need a travel policy. Maybe we don't need an
Okay.
expense policy, right?
Okay. Yep.
Neither one of those things killed us. Well, should we have a time off policy? I don't know. These are salaried employees. They don't clock in.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we all do work on our, we call them phones now, but those computers we hold in our hands.
Right. Right. So you remove all this stuff. What did you, and by the way, I stole one from you. I do that with my team. I don't have vacation. They just take it when they need it, and we trust the process, and it works great.
I'm sure for you, Molly, it changes the way you manage too. So now you manage more in terms of what needs to be done at what level of quality by when, right? So it kind of forces you to be a better manager too, because you're focused on outcomes and deliverables, not on keeping track of people's time at work.
Sure. Amen.
And
right.
and I bet I suspect that a lot of your team works virtually or remotely. I mean, almost anybody in media does.
Sure.
So that concept of, I was thinking the other day, I just said about holding your computer in your hand. Up until we could really have mobile technology at that level, until we had laptops that we could remove, you went to work on your computer because that's where they were. Right. So you had to have people in the office. I talked to a group of bank HR people the other day, and they said, well, we have this rule. They have to be in the office from 9 to 5. And I said, do you take their cell phones away from them when they leave?
Oh, my God. What'd they say?
Well, no.
No,
I'm like,
because I might email them at 9 and I need to hear from them.
Exactly. I said, you already work remotely. The
Yeah.
reason people are cynical about this is because, oh, really? So you can still email me at 9:30.
So if I'm an organization, right, and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, wow, how do I strip this down? How do you ensure as a leader that when you sort of reduce and pull away some of these sort of regulations and rules, et cetera, structure, that it translates into behaviors?
You have to model it. People have to see you being honest and straightforward. You have to give more context, right? So it's, instead of giving orders, you have to give more reasons and rationale. I mean, I think when we just had that conversation, you resonate because it's logical. And so you have to really retrain yourself to just tell the truth about the business and what you're doing and why, more often than you probably already do. And so it's more about giving people lots of information so they can make their own calls, and those calls will be the right ones. So better communication, and more often communication about what we're doing, what we shouldn't be doing. I was consulting with a startup CEO the other day, and he was describing his business to me, and he said, let me describe our strategy. And he gives me this conversation. I said, that sounds really great, but that's not a strategy, that's a plan. And that's a good thing. Right. And we should all have plans. So don't stop saying those things that you just said to me, but a strategy also includes what you're not going to do. A strategy is selecting from that possibility of all the things we could do in the world to the things that we're committed to doing for our customer and our business. And so that, just even something that simple of saying, I know you guys have brought this up and we realize that it's something that we might want to do in the future, but we're not going to do it now. Or even just simple, we've decided that 5 kinds of flavored water is enough. So, if the kiwi passion fruit probiotic drink is your personal favorite, then go get yourself some.
Yeah.
It's saying, here, we're going to make some choices and some trade-offs here that models for people that that's really what success at work is about. It's about using good judgment and making the right trade-offs that serve the business or the customer.
Well, I love what you say, hire adults and let them go. And the Netflix culture deck, right, which is super cool. And if people are listening, haven't checked it out, check it out. We'll include it in the show notes as a link. But, was publicly sharing that an intentional move? And sort of...
No.
Okay. I wonder.
No, the story is, here's the true story. So we had worked on it for 10 years.
Okay.
And we used it as an onboarding document. And it was never, ever, ever, ever conceived to be, here's the way everybody else should be running their company. It was a way for us to say, when you join our company. Here's how we operate. Here's how you should behaviors you should expect from each other. And we wrote it with the entire management team. I didn't do it. Reed Hastings didn't do it. But hundreds and hundreds of people contributed to it and contribute to it still. There's a new version that's on the website. So we paid attention to the culture we were building as we were building it day after day, month after month, year after year. It didn't just happen. So we were driving to work one day. We carpooled together, and Reed said, "Hey, I met this woman who started this really cool company called SlideShare, and you can put PowerPoint presentations online." And I said, "Well, that is a great idea. I wonder what somebody's going to put out there." He said, "Oh, I put the deck out this morning."
By the way,
there you go.
By the way,
by the way. And I thought, oh God, this, it's the ugliest document known to humankind, and you're going to scare all our candidates. And he said, "Well, only the ones we don't want." But at the time, we didn't have enough candidates to be that picky. But it resonated and changed the way we interviewed almost immediately, because our interviews went from who are you, what are your skills and experience, are you qualified for this job, to how do you like to work, what makes you crazy, are you okay with a lot of freedom, and with that comes.
It sounds like it was kind of real. Which sounds
but we had I had great conversations with wonderful people who, at the end of the interview, we'd say, "I don't know if this is the right place for you. You seem to need, you like more structure than we have. We run a little on the edge of chaos sometimes, and that's a personal, it's not a good or bad thing. It's not a judgment call. It's not one is the right way to operate than the other, but each of us likes to operate in a different kind of environment. Honestly, a lot of people don't like that much responsibility. They like somebody else making decisions for them.
Did your turnover decrease after you sort of had some weight, kind of time behind you with this new approach?
The problem with the word turnover and retention is that I hate them both.
Got it. There's a couple more words you hate I want to talk about too, but go on.
Yeah, but the thing is, for example, when the company evolved from a DVD by mail business to a digital streaming business, then the people who had tons of expertise in shipping DVDs in the mail weren't needed. Right.
Sure.
So as the company morphed, so turnover was usually higher as we changed business model or technology, like it happens in every company. Or, when you hired somebody, a group team of people to build something, and years later they had built it and it worked, then they don't need to build it anymore.
Right.
Right. So I don't believe in retaining people. Here's what flipped the switch for me, Molly. When I decided I wanted to create a company that was a great place to be from, everything changed. I wanted to say, wow, here's Netflix on my resume, and here's what I did there. And here's the amazing accomplishments that I have there that give me bragging rights for my next job. Okay, so I'm talking to a group of 800 people last week, and I walk in the room and I say, raise your hand if you're in the same job you had when you left college. And of course, other than an intern, nobody's hand goes up. And I say, every 800 people worked for companies, these horrible companies that couldn't retain them. You mean there was turnover at those companies? I'm like, come on.
Mm-hmm. You're just keeping it real.
This is a journey. This is what really happens. So I think that, back to my radical candor, I think it's perfectly reasonable for you and I to have a conversation where I go, hey, girlfriend, we're coming to the end here, aren't we?
Yep. You've done your thing here. Good for you.
You've done your thing here. Good for you. So what's next? How are we going to plan for that? Is there another place in the company for you to do something that you love to do? And if there's not, then let's figure out where you're going to go. And, let's reminisce about the good times and move on.
Mm-hmm. And there's two other words, right, by the way, that I know you don't love, which is empowerment and engagement. Tell me a little bit about that, sort of why.
Oh, empowerment I don't like, because it assumes that you can give someone power, like with a magic wand.
And it comes from within.
Yeah, so much. It's a premise. It's why I named the book Powerful. I think we all walk in the door with a lot of power every day. And then we systemically take it away from people. Oh, you have to have approval for that. Oh, that's an expense over $4,000. Oh, that's not being decided at your level. Or what somebody said to me trying to recruit me after I had left Netflix, I said, what does CEO of the company think about this initiative? And she said, I don't talk to the CEO. That's above my pay grade. And I said,
Wow.
okay, just a weird little sidebar here. Never speak those words again as long as you live.
Good coaching. Good coaching.
Like
Yeah,
you're
for
trying,
sure.
you're trying to recruit me to be an executive at your company, and you just told me that you're not allowed to speak above your pay grade. So that's not a
Gross.
place I want to go.
Right.
But so that's empowerment. She had the power to tell me the truth.
Sure. Sure.
Right. So anyway, that's empowerment. And then engagement is, let's hope that 100% of our employees are engaged. It's called like, doing your job. And so the riff I do on it sometimes is when I talk to women, I say, look, employee engagement doesn't mean somebody put a ring on it. Like this is not a relationship where if you interview at another company, you're cheating on your husband. But it's a lot of the processes that we do that are associated with engagement. Like I'm not a fan at all of anonymous employee engagement surveys because they train people, so it's not everything that you say, it's everything that you do. If you have an anonymous employee engagement survey, you're saying to people, you can only tell the truth when you're anonymous. You
Very
can only
interesting.
speak the truth if we don't know who you are, right? And then, all you get really is a heat map of how people were feeling on that day.
But doesn't that bubble up into a culture in which people feel safe to provide feedback that's real and honest without feeling at risk, right? Like I would imagine it's also ensuring that the people that we need the feedback from feel safe enough to provide it.
I'm with you 1,000%.
Okay, right.
But that doesn't come from filling in a survey.
Right. So there's a lot of things that have to happen before to create the environment in which people can
or
tell the
or
truth
in
and
from my perspective, instead of, right? I mean, why don't we have real conversations where we get real people in the room and ask those questions in front of each other? How's it going? Would you recommend us to another company? What could management be doing better or differently? What are your
mhm.
personal gripes? So that when you say, hey, by the way, my favorite probiotic kimchi drink is not in the fridge, I can say, we're sticking with the 5 we have. Next question. So I don't bubble up all this feedback that you don't have any intention of doing anything about anyway.
And at scale, you as a leader have to have employees that you trust, teammates that you trust immensely with great communication so that they can do that and have those conversations, right?
Yes, and that's where, I'm also very concerned right now about the Me Too movement and the issues that we're dealing with in the workplace. I'm really worried that this is going to become an HR issue. Oh, sexual harassment, go see HR, right? This is a conversation that we should all be having with each other in person all the time.
Mhm.
Right. You
Mhm.
shouldn't have to go to HR when somebody's treating you unfairly. You should be able to go to your boss and go, he was kind of a creepster in the meeting the other day. What do you think I should do about it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And
Right.
whoever anybody in management, any of your colleagues should say, wow, that's not cool. Let's go talk to him. Right. And that builds trust. It's those conversations that build trust, not the survey where you wrote down some meaningful essay about something that's important to you that nobody ever responded to.
So what do you think organizations are getting wrong when it comes to how to motivate employees, right? When we talk about powerful and about building a culture of freedom and responsibility.
Well, I think we get it wrong from the beginnings in a lot of companies by telling them that we're your family and we're going to take care of you and the rest of your career is in our hands, either subtly or overtly. In many large corporations, they say it very overtly because it's not true. It's not true. And we don't teach people enough about our business, not just their job. So when you understand, every single person in a company understands how to read a profit and loss statement, who the main competitors are, how much money you got in the bank, what's your stock, the analysts think your stock price is whatever it is, all of those business decisions, everybody can understand. And then you understand how the whole thing works and what your place is in it. Because if you start out by just telling people, just hang on and I'll tell you what to do next, then we're training people that the company's A, going to take care of them, and B, tell them what to do, and C, it's going to result in a beautiful, happy outcome every time.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, all of these global happiness initiatives, right? Like diversity. Don't get me wrong. I spent my whole life working on this. You know how we get more diverse workforces? We work really hard to do it. It is not a seminar. It's recruiting all the time. All the time. It's talking about these issues at work, during work, when work is happening. It's calling somebody in a meeting going, that's mansplaining, what you just did right there. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Keeping it top of mind every day.
Keeping it top of mind every day. And then the other person can say, oh, I always wondered what that meant. I'm sorry. And they'll stop doing it.
Well, you're talking about connection and communication and relationships, right? And keeping it real. And I think you talked once on I saw it somewhere, right, about these annual reviews, and they're just miserable. You sit down I remember when I was 23 and I'd go into these things. And you're not even listening. All you're doing to try to figure out and wait until the end until you figure out if you get a raise or not. Right? They don't work. I'm with you.
And then afterwards, you try and hide your disappointment that it was a 3%.
But you're supposed to say thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Everybody else got 2. You're translating 3% in your head. Like, is that like $1.50 a week?
Dang, I can't even get a Starbucks.
Yeah. And here's what I hate about them. I hate that I don't think they accomplish any of the objectives that they set out to accomplish, or the reasons we say we do them. So if you say, oh, it's a mechanism to give you feedback on your performance, if you want to have a mechanism that gives an employee feedback on their performance that works, you're certainly going to do it more than once a year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? You don't do anything once a year that you're good at. Nothing. Right? So that mechanism, it doesn't work for that. If it's to be the exercise that we do to determine your pay, what you just said, your raise, then don't you want to know how they came up with that 3.5%? Right? You don't want to just know the number. You want to walk out and go, that doesn't seem like much. Why is that? Is that I'm at the top of my pay grade? Is it that, job salaries for people like me have flatlined? Is it that they really don't think I'm that great? They just don't tell anybody that they're not that great? Is it that I'm a woman? Is it that, right? You don't know. When I wrote the book and I wrote the chapter on compensation, my editor, is not in tech. She's not in HR. She's not in management. But I knew it was an important chapter to write because she kept saying to me, are you kidding me? Is that how they do it?
Yeah, and your position is that if somebody makes a mistake at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, you talk to them about it right then so that they learn, right? It's no different than parenting probably, or right? You deal with it immediately and you talk about it, you address it and you hear it out and you move on.
One of the most effective forums for having feedback conversation I've experienced is meetings where, I can say, I don't think Molly's finished speaking. Can you let her finish? Right. Or, you just interrupted him again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we can all laugh and go, see, right? And you say, I'm working on it. I'm okay. I'm sorry. So we can see each other, learning from each other, and practice doing things differently. Humans, we mimic, right? We watch each other. So when I go into companies and they show me their absolutely beautiful manifesto slide deck of their company culture, and I see, and I start talking to people and I realize that the executives are always late to meetings and they hold a lot of secrets, then they can write down transparency until hell freezes over.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They got to behave that way.
And that's what makes people cynical. That's, when cynicism creeps in at work, then people are spending a whole lot of time talking and whispering about, I call it shispering, about stuff that's not important to your customer.
So tell me, at Netflix, that you have an annual feedback day, and how a leader might be able to incorporate something like that in their own organization.
I don't know how Netflix does it now, and what we did when I was there was we had more than annually, it was sometimes a couple times a year, we did a 360 feedback session where you gave each other feedback. We did it on email back when I was there, but I've been gone for 5 years. But I think you're asking about the structure around it, and the structure around it was really simple. We said used a method we called stop, start, continue. So I would say, hey, I want you to keep being the great colleague that you are. It's really cool that you come to my team and explain what you're doing, and everybody really looks upon you as a leader in your field, right? I would like you to start doing that more often with people you don't know, right? And I'd like you to stop being so moody, because it's really hard to get things done when we have to gauge if you're in a good mood or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sure.
And here are the consequences of doing that. Teams of people plan when they're going to come talk to you. Really, is that what we want them to be doing? Planning when to have a conversation. But with all feedback, the examples I just gave you, it's not just giving people feedback, it's giving them alternatives and solutions for the things that you could do better. The second thing about feedback that people totally forget. So we think feedback means constructive criticism, means telling you something that might hurt your feelings. But back to your parenting example, here's what kind of feedback, and that kind of feedback works, right? That bad thing you did, don't do that bad thing anymore. We've talked about it before. Then the next time you do that bad thing, because you'll feel bad. It's called guilt tripping, right? It's effective, but it's slow, right? If instead we're in a meeting where I say, that's it, Molly. That's exactly what I'm talking about, what you just said. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for being so honest. And what a great idea, right? You are going to beam for days. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to go do that again before the end of the day.
Sure. So
we forget that, find somebody doing something right and tell them so.
Sure. Praise them. Sure. Appreciate it. Yeah.
But for real stuff, right? Not
So
that
totally. Right. Not forgetting your coffee.
Yeah. Or saying
the way they said it. Yeah.
Right at the meeting saying, wait a minute, I'm not finished.
Yeah. And that start, stop, continue exercise for people that aren't familiar with it, I think it's so clean and easy to do.
Yeah.
What are the things that, I can start doing stuff. It's so clean and easy. And we use it too.
Yeah. 20 minutes, right?
Oh, for sure. It's super fast.
Or that hour and a half really deep discussion that you really have needed to have for years.
Yeah. That's important. No
right?
question. Yeah.
And you don't get to those until you've done 10, 20-minute ones where we've built a rapport where you can say, I can't believe how you didn't get that done. And I say, I can't believe you didn't tell, that other person that I was going to come talk to them. Oh, did I say I was going to do that? Yeah, you did. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so much little repair work that we can do.
Every day, right? Every day is what
every
I'm hearing
day.
You say. Yeah.
And it's not just, they're all companies get these myths. Well, you know how he is. He's such a micromanager. I do recall us having that conversation 4 years, 9 months, and 12 days ago. But when's the last time? Give me an example of when he's done it recently. I'm like, he's been working really hard on this, and I don't think that's true anymore. So let's kill that myth.
Right. So what advice, sort of with your overarching sort of mindset theme around culture, how do you tell organizations to maybe pivot or shift the way they recruit or hire differently?
Just first of all, my overarching solution to almost any of these issues is first to ask why. Why do we do it this way, right? Why do we make the candidate pipeline the job of HR, and we don't jump in until they've got me 12 qualified resumes out of 500? So if I reverse that and say, it's my job as a manager to build a great team that does amazing work on time with quality, that serves the customer. That's my job. So I'm going to be looking for potential members myself all the time. And I'm going to be thinking about what we're going to be doing in the future. And I'm going to start with what we're going to be doing in the future. And I'm going to work from that future date back. And I'm going to say, okay, if we're amazing in 6 or 8 months, what's going to be different then? And then I'm going to step back and go, okay, wow, we're going to be at scale. This is going to be a lot more complex than it is. Okay, I'm going to need people who've seen a business at scale, right? Maybe we're shipping something. I'm going to need to see I'm going to have people who've seen, pretty big scale. And then I'm going to have to drop down and go, well, what kind of skills and experience would it take to be able to move from where we are to that kind of scale in that time frame? Okay, now who do I have on the team? Well, I only have people who made this business up and have never seen anything bigger than where we're at right now. So now I know the problem I'm trying to solve. Now I know the depth of experience in people that I'm looking for. And only now, I'm looking to say, okay, this is what the hole I need to fill. Right. And then I start thinking, do I know anybody? Where might they come from? And then the staffing organization comes in as your partner there.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
I'm thinking this, here's 3 other companies that would have people that might be okay, they're going to go scour for them and then wait a minute. Remember we interviewed that guy? It's a collaborative, ongoing building of talent in the organization, not a task for HR people to deliver to managers.
Mm-hmm. A stack of resumes.
Same thing's going to happen with diversity. Oh, I support a diverse workforce, but HR doesn't give me diverse candidates.
That's
right?
interesting. Sure.
So here's how, I told the CEO of a company, I'm like, listen, you have 150 people in your company, go down and ask every single person in the company who's the best woman they've ever worked with. Interview 150 of them and you will hire someone.
And it's funny, what I'm hearing is what you're suggesting takes time and it takes work, right?
Yeah.
It takes time to engage, take time to have the conversations. It takes time. Some of the people that are listening may be inside of a Fortune 50 company, right? How do you tell people to do this at scale?
You don't do the whole thing at scale. You pick something and you change it locally.
Okay.
Right. I mean, one of the problems for me with coaching Fortune 50 companies is that they've gotten to the place where everything is a global initiative. Right. So these huge rollouts that take all year that have, languages. So instead of just saying to some small team somewhere who, they're not giving each other feedback, say, you know what, this year we're going to free you from the annual performance review. We're not communicating very well. What can we do differently? You guys have any ideas? Instead of saying, well, we have determined that this particular methodology is best practices in our industry, which means the cool kids do it. That's all it means. Best practices means what everybody else does or a company you admire does. That's all.
Sure. When you think about that, right? Like if I'm listening and I want to sort of make a pivot, right, toward this. And I know you work with lots of organizations now when you speak. What's the one thing that you would encourage maybe a traditional HR organization to start with to begin to make this change?
Every day, look at something that you do that you've always done and ask yourself, what's the end game here? What's the reason for this? Just first ask why. When I talk to HR people, I'm like, I really have no personal passion about changing the way you operate. If it works great, it works great. I mean, I'm not naming the things that you should change. I'm naming the things that you should question. And you should be able to say, I don't care if you want to continue doing an annual performance review because you've always done it. It seems to work pretty well in your company. But you have to explain to me in plain English why it is we do it.
Yeah, put a sticky note on your desk that says why, right? So you get a vacation request form and you say, why do we do this?
Why do we do this, right? And I don't care if it's like that. It's because we're a federally regulated entity and that we're required to turn in payroll records. There would be a reason. I don't know if that's a true reason, but if you believe, right? But you should be able to explain that to people in plain English, not in HR terms. And all I'm asking when I do that, I'm only asking what we ask every other team in the company to do. So, for example, I get a lot of people who get hung up on data now, right? Well, now we have HR metrics, right? Finally, we were able to measure time to hire. And I'm like, wow, that sounds great. Now, why is that important? Well, because, we're faster than we used to be. I'm like, okay, are we more quickly hiring people who don't turn out? Because that's kind of a bad ROI, right? So the other thing is, it's this matter of questioning what you're doing forever. I'm from a great place. The company I'm from was a company full of innovation. And so when I was surrounded by people who innovated all the time, I decided that it was not fair that they're the ones that are having all the fun. And so I thought, well, could I possibly innovate in my space? I don't know. And I mean, I couldn't have done it without Reed as a partner,
Sure.
because he's the one. He would come in and say, hey, do you have to have paid time off? And the HR VP and me would say, of course you have to have paid time off, Reed. Everybody's got paid time off. And then I would think, oh shit, it's Reed. Well, you mean legally?
Right. Sure.
Why do we keep track of this? I don't know. And, and then I start digging around, and literally 100% of every lawyer and other HR executive I talk to says, of course you have to have paid time off. It's ridiculous to even question it.
Wow, that's so cool. No, I love it. I mean, I love it.
100%, right?
Yeah.
So, but when we stood in front of our employees and said, we're going to try this crazy experiment that literally everyone tells us will fail, and that it's going to be utter chaos around here, and we're not going to get any work done, and you guys are going to sue us right and left. But we're thinking that maybe you're grown up enough to be able to manage your own time with your manager on your team. And, do let me know if it doesn't work out. And if it doesn't work out, we'll go do what everybody else does. We'll call it best practices.
But let's try it.
Right? And, in the end, that's a great example. In the end, you know what? People take on time off, what they always have.
Isn't that funny? No, that's what I find in my organization.
Don't you?
Yeah, in fact, it works better. They take it around the times in which maybe our business is slower, or it's a perfect time because of time. So they're actually more sensitive to the timing than potentially it's unbelievable. What do you think keeps companies from adapting, right? From asking why more?
Well, partly because command and control is how we've always done it. It's also partly because, like you and I talked earlier in our conversation, the work environment was a very controlled space. When you walked in the door at 9, you were in work, and it was tops down, hierarchical management were the smart guys that made decisions, and you started as a worker bee and you worked your way up to the top of this incredible pyramid over some period of time. So that's just not the way it works anymore. And the other thing that's profoundly different about work these days is how collaborative it is. So we are so close to our customers now. It used to be that only the sales guys talked to the customers and everybody else did their own thing. And now, is there a company on earth that doesn't have a social media presence? So we know about our companies and our customers at an intimate way we never did before. And I think that allows us to have a lot of this freedom, because another important concept for me is to have people understand that the company doesn't work for you and you don't work for the company. You exist for your customer.
Right. Amen. I love that. Sure.
Right. Sure. So I go to young startups where I walk in the door and there's a full-on bar with a bartender on duty on payroll.
Wow.
And I have to say to them, companies don't exist to make you happy. And they look at me like, what?
They go, well, but this Bloody Mary is working for me.
The people that we want to make happy don't work here.
Tell me about that.
Well, that sense of, that customer first centricity allows for the honesty that I'm talking about. I know this is your idea, and I know you're the head of the organization, and I know that you're very smart, but I'm not sure this is the best result for our customer, because here's what I've observed. Or coming in new to an organization and people saying, no, we've tried that. That doesn't work. They don't like it. And being able to say, when did you try that? Oh, 7 years ago. Well, the customer's really different than it was 7 years ago. Or, that worked when we were little. I'm not sure it works at scale, right? So that constant reinvention, again, all I'm saying is we're going to use that same fluid, change-hungry, limber organization because you get more stuff done. It's not just it's going to make you a happier person. I'm just want to tell you the truth, and then you'll have a better career because you'll get more stuff done.
Well, I got a great piece of advice from a good friend of mine who said when we were launching our negotiation workshops, he said, call 5 to 10 of, your greatest customers, the people that you work with a lot, and
Hmm.
and talk to them and find out what they want and what would they pay and how long do they want it to be and how many people do they want and who would in their organization would do it. And, we learned so much. And I can tell
Of
you the
course.
roadmap we took was different than I probably would have steered us in light of those conversations. And so I really connect with what you just said because we did it and it was very, very impactful. So
And everybody can.
yeah, amen. Totally.
Right? Everybody can. And if it's not that I was lucky at Netflix because we were all customers, right? So, and when in the early days when it was a bunch of geeks, I was just the normal one. I'd say, look, no one cares what their buffering speed is. They think it's magic. Okay. So like that gauge at the bottom of the player, nobody, please take that off. We'd test it and it would turn out that nobody paid any attention to it. But, we could have input into that. And the thing is now, all of us can. All of us can. We know who we serve. We can talk. And if nothing else, then in your example, you could say, hey, you're new here. Here's the stuff that we constantly learn from our customers. Pay attention to when you're talking to them. If they're hesitant, are things changing out there? Are assumptions changing? And then you don't have to have an engagement program.
Right. Amen. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is you argue that sort of flexibility is more important than efficiency, right? That flexibility is more important than efficiency. Tell me a little bit more about that. Can you elaborate on that?
The starting premise is the ending premise. So it depends on what you're attempting to do. If you're very clear about what your end game is, what your objectives are, and what your deliverables are, then I think it's much better to get smart people with good judgment and allow them to do it in, their own way. And I'm talking about knowledge workers pretty senior too. There's efficiencies that where you have to map it together. So let's take customer service, for example. I can't tell you how many companies I've had to explain to people, why customer service people are paid hourly, right? And they're like, because they're second class citizens. Like,
Dang.
no, because
Yeah.
they have to be present to win, right? They have to literally be with the customer, engaging. That's real engagement, speaking to them in one way or another in order to do their job. But let's take customer service as a great example. You need to have a lot of efficiency around customer service because they have to be there, right? Either on chat or on the phone or in the building or whatever. They have to be present. And so the more flexibility you can have around their lives, the more you're able to make sure that you have enough great people that answer the customer's questions. But here's, for example, the one thing we never teach the most important people who should. If we taught CS reps how to read the profit and loss statement, how to read a P&L, they would know how much we spend, each company spends on marketing to get a new customer into your product or service, right? And you can measure it, right? You know that ROI on that, what that marketing spend is. Let's say it's $10 a customer. If you taught people that's, here's what profit is, here's what revenue is, here's what our run rate is, here's what our expenses are. By the way, every single time someone hangs up from talking to you and says, that was so great, I've got to tell my friends to use this service. You've thrown $10 on the bottom line. You have contributed directly to the profitability of the company because you just got a customer in for free. So if that was your job, instead of having to deal with those angry, cranky people all the time, then you might, rise through the ranks.
Right.
Might
Right.
say, hey, by the way, where's our mechanism to let the people who are building the product know that 90% of our complaints are about this really minor issue? And then we can come back and go, wow, is it more cost efficient to hire another 50 customer service reps or a couple of really expensive engineers to solve the problem?
It's a little bit of the why, right? Asking why and staying flexible instead of too efficient in the process.
But having context too. I mean, the other part is, we talked, like, I hate the word millennials. I do. My son just turned 30. I'm like, so what are you, a thirlenial? Like, change your name. It's called being early in your career,
Right.
And early to the workforce. So there's a lot of context that's why I'm saying there's a lot of context we can be teaching people. I mean, if you just came out of college, you're perfectly okay sitting down listening to a lecture about how to read a profit and loss statement. And don't hire anybody that's not smart enough to do that. So that setting of context for people early in their careers is more important than later, because you have some experience and you've seen some stuff. But that's not treating them differently because they're millennials.
Right. Context is king, is what I'm hearing. And it's true. I
Yeah.
get it. Give them that
Yeah.
overarching vision of the whole windshield, right? Not just the lane that you want them to run down.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to feed them the banquet at once.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Right. I mean,
do it over time.
Do it over time. And so, to come full circle, that's part of the reason we wrote the culture deck, was we wanted to sit down with you when you started in the company and say, let us tell you a couple of things about us that might be different. This is about how we work together, what we expect from each other, the experiments we've tried, what's working so far.
Well, and you got to be saving a ton of time on the back end of cutting off, the pass on somebody that may be an awesome person, but it's not a good fit here.
Well, like I said, it was 10 years in before we published it. And then I didn't want to do it. And then I wish we had.
Sure.
10 years earlier, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a way for all of us to. So, I mean, here's another thing about the things like the Netflix culture deck. Even if you read it and you hate it, it's a good example of the things you should learn about a company before you take a job there.
Anyway, right.
How do people operate? How are decisions getting made? How do I find out about this? Do I see, a simple example is, if I'm in a meeting in one part of the company, I'm in finance, and someone says, man, I can't believe what they're doing in marketing. It seems ridiculous to me. I don't know why they're spending that kind of money. And someone at the table says, I'll go ask them. I'll bring it back the next meeting. I'll find out. Right. And especially if that person is a leader. At the next meeting, it's like, before we get started, I brought in my friend from marketing because she can explain it better than me to give you some context about why they're spending this kind of money. Instead of everybody at the table nodding their heads and rolling their eyes and going, those marketing people, they just love to spend money. Well, that's their job.
But let's find out why.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? What are they trying to accomplish? Right?
Yep.
So the other thing about that kind of cross-functional curiosity is that's fun.
Absolutely, for sure it is.
Especially when you're early in your career and you don't really know what you're supposed to be, right? Like you don't know, for example, that marketing is really analytic.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a cool thing for a young person to have the opportunity to go do that inside of an organization. But, and first, Patty, I would say that you've got to create a culture in which somebody feels comfortable inside of that meeting to say, let's find out. I'd be willing to walk over to marketing and sort of ask some of these questions and bring it back to our next meeting. Sound good?
Yeah.
That has to happen, obviously.
Right. So the leader models it the first time, and the next time go, well, we all know Janice because she came and talked to our meeting. Who wants to go talk to her this time? What I want us to be is flexible and learning and eager for the next opportunity, because that's how our lives are going to be. And so I'm not just talking about how companies should behave differently. I'm talking about being honest enough as employees and employment seekers to say, this is my career. Am I learning stuff? Am I happy still? Am I doing stuff I want to do? Does the company need me to do this great stuff? And if not, moving on.
Well, yeah, and you use the metaphor, which I, of course, connect to, which is the metaphor of sort of building a sports team, not a family, right? And I saw that obviously as an agent, right? I mean, guys can love where they play, but guess what? I mean, if they're a free agent and somebody's going to pay them, 10, 15.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of got to entertain it. I mean, it's a short window of time to do what they do.
Well, of course, you know this better than anybody. I'm at a conference the other day, and it was with a lot of touchy-feely people, and the coach of the San Antonio Spurs was there. And somebody said to him, oh, you just must feel terrible when you have to cut somebody from the team after you've, invested in them so much. And he just looked incredulously. He's like, they get it. It's professional basketball.
Yeah, it's a business.
They know what the game is. And I remember sitting in the audience going, "What? How come they can hear this truth.
Right. 100%.
Right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
we can't.
I mean, I know. And it's an analogy I used once. I had a guy one time, he comes out of the clubhouse and he'd been traded and he was shocked, and it's 11:30 at night and he calls me a wreck. And you think about, he sort of felt like he was, how could they do this to me? And I thought I was going to be here forever. But you think about that for employees. You walk into your office one day and your boss sits you down and goes, "Hey, listen, we're, you're at Coke. We're sending you to Pepsi. So is that cool?" And when we sort of create that mindset, you get, that's a big deal.
You also probably know, because you intimately know from these kind of examples, had it been a better coach, or right, or had it been this person should have seen this coming.
Well, yeah, when you're hitting 190,
right?
When you're hitting 198, you're not hanging out very long. Yeah. So
exactly, right. So because it's the coach's job, it's the team's job to field the best team to win.
Sure, no different than a company.
I've learned so much. I've been so looking forward to talking to you, because I have learned so much in the last 5 years from sports coaches. It's like we could throw out all of the HR stuff and just start over. The constant feedback. No coach would say, "Well, I want to, at the end of the season, I'm going to sit everybody down and tell them what they did wrong."
Never. No. Trust me. Yeah. No.
Right?
No, they're gonna call a timeout and light you up right then, actually.
Or like, no sports team goes, "Oh my God, we didn't realize that team that we were playing at the end was so much better than we were. Mm-hmm. We should have been prepared." Right?
Oh my gosh.
Say, "You're not that great, but you're really nice. So we want to make sure we keep you on the team because you remember everybody's birthday."
Right. That's good.
And one last thing about sports teams. You walk away being proud of having been part of the team.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? It's that experience together with everybody else involved that makes it wonderful, and you don't expect the team to take care of the rest of your life.
I always used to laugh when I'd see a guy that would be, maybe he's a second baseman and he's traded and, he's rounding the bases. He ends up on second on the team that he played for, and the second baseman and the guy on the base are just chatting it up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And people used to go, "God, they like, they're probably playing golf in the off season, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Patty, you've been so gracious with your time, so we end with this sort of rapid fire sort of questions. And so I want to fire some questions off to you, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. So one word to describe you.
Powerful.
Nice. What was your first job?
I get asked this a lot. My first job was honestly I worked in a used car lot. Filing things, and the next to the receptionist who would answer the phone and say, "This is my first female work role model. Good morning, Sheryl Chevrolet. How may I help you? One moment, please." And she'd put them on hold, and she'd say to the loudspeaker, "Harvey Schumann, line 4.
Wow. So she was good externally, not so much in-house.
Well, she just had two different personas. It was confusing to me.
Oh, my God.
I also worked in a lumber mill.
Got it. Good for you. All those things we learned from. What's your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book, like my favorite TV show, is whatever I'm reading currently. So I just finished Emily Chang's Brotopia, which is a story of, the bro culture in the Silicon Valley. I'm liking that a lot. Right?
Cool. All right, I'm going to pick it up. What's your favorite show on Netflix?
Again,
the last one you watched? Okay.
Whatever the last one I watch, or the one that I'm currently watching. I'm kind of hankering for the new BoJack Horseman to come out because it's so quirky and weird, and I love it.
Oh, cool. All right. So what's the best professional advice you've ever been given?
When I was very young, I had a boss who said, "Your gift is your gab. Don't get lost in the details. Always find a way to speak your truth." And he gave me that advice when I was like 22 or something like that. And I probably would have beaten myself up for being a bad administrator for the next 30 years. If you not told me that.
The show is called Game Changers, right? So one last question is, what game changer inspires you in the world and life that, has inspired you that's a real game changer, and why?
I saw Gloria Steinem speak the other day. What a powerhouse that woman is.
Really?
In her 80s.
Wow.
Think about what she's seen and what she's done. So I'm going to call Gloria Steinem today.
Got it. All right. Good stuff. Well, Patty, thanks for coming on. And where can people find you online, the book, all that kind of stuff?
Almost anywhere. The book's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the places you get books. My website's pattymccord.com, and I'm, I tweet and I do LinkedIn. So just Google me, you'll find me.
Got it. Good stuff. Patty, thanks so much.
Thank you, Molly. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.